Imagine a scene of dialogue at a funeral reception in one of the most heartbreaking movies of its year. Does it look something like this?
I'll get you something. Hey, Janine! Sure? Never mind.
What?
Forget it. Skip it.
I can't hear a word you say.
What?
Did we get food?
He didn't... What?
That's probably not what you imagined. Manchester by the Sea is a poignant study of the impact of grief on its characters' lives. There's a lot of great things about this film, but I want to focus on how director Kenneth Lonergan uses realism to frame the impact that grief has on the characters. Spoilers ahead. In a movie that primarily centers around the impact of several deaths on other people's lives, there would be some obvious scenes that you could use for big emotional moments. We see these all the time in movies. Funerals in the rain, the wakes with poignant moments between characters, the dramatic deathbed scenes. Those are all traditionally cinematic moments. But Lonergan subverts cinematic norms with his film, during the moments that would play in most films as intimately dramatic with teary close-ups punctuated by sobs. Lonergan chooses to pull back. He obscures dialogue with music, creates distance using slow motion, and disrupts with humor. A perfect example of this is the scene where Lee tells Patrick that his father has died. As the audience, we know what's happening, but Lonergan doesn't let us connect with the emotion of the scene. He forces us to watch from a distance, unable to hear what the characters are saying. And this tricks us into thinking we're watching a moment that's more real, that hasn't been tampered with for dramatic effect. In our lives, our emotions don't follow a traditional act structure. They don't happen on cue with the music. Huge events in our lives that are supposed to be emotional and foundational can often pass us by in a blur, and they might be shrouded in dullness. But those emotions can come back to us in quiet moments. In real life, grief doesn't end when the camera cuts away from the big moments. Manchester by the Sea's cinematography reinforces this. Most of the movie plays out with wide shots. But when we do get close-ups, it's during the everyday moments. A visit to a lawyer's office.
I just wanted to say...
A phone call.
Actually, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just gotta go.
That's okay.
Hi.
A chance meeting on the street.
Rachel, this is Lee. Hello? Lee, this is Rachel.
Or a moment alone. And Lonergan purposefully disrupts our ideals of how the larger moments should play, leaning away from making the story more dramatic, including things that normally would be excluded from a film. These mistakes, annoyances, and funny moments are a part of real life. They don't stop when it's time to have a funeral. And when the movie doesn't focus on the grief in the big moments like we expect a movie to, it feels less like a movie and more like reality, making the character's grief feel all the more real. And when grief does hit the hardest, it often hits when we least expect it.
Hey,
I think there's something wrong with me.
what do you mean? Like what? Are you sick?
I don't know.
Come on, buddy.
Lee's character is one who has purposefully distanced himself from his past in trying to distance himself from his grief.
I think the idea was that you would relocate.
Relocate to where?
Well, if you
Here?
look, as you can see, your brother worked everything out extremely carefully.
But he can't have,
Yes.
can't have meant that.
This movie shows us his journey back to Manchester, back among these people. The nonlinear storytelling illustrates how this triggers his memories, forcing him to face his past and face his grief again. The constant shots of the landscape and the setting of Manchester, intercut with the unveiling of the tragedy in Lee's past, helps us to understand how his grief is connected to the location. In Manchester by the Sea, like in real life, grief doesn't obey the rules. Grief doesn't stop and start when it best suits the next beat in a screenplay's structure. Grief can sneak up on you, returning long after you want it to, and sometimes it's not there when it feels like it should be.
Where's my brother?
Oh, he's downstairs. You could see him if you want.
Lee is unable to deal with his, creating a pattern of constant running, but those left in the wake of his tragedy keep pulling him back, forcing him to face his past and his issues. And healing might be possible, but it won't be cinematic. It won't come from a moment like this one, but it might come from a moment like this.